So the way Venerable Ñāṇamoli has put this book together, up to this point it's gone roughly in chronological order, but now he has a chapter, is chapter 11, called The Person, which is just about trying to further paint a picture of who the Buddha was and different teachings where the Buddha is talking about himself in terms of describing himself and who he is and what he is. Chapter 11, The Person. Now that the stream of events is no longer traceable for a period, a pause can be made here in order to see what is said in the Canon about the personal qualities of the Buddha, to see both what the Buddha had to say of himself and what other people of the time who encountered him said of him in the oldest reports that have come down to us. Thus I heard, once when the Blessed One was living at Savatthi in Jeta's grove, Anathapindika's park, he sat reviewing the many evil, unwholesome things abandoned, and the many wholesome things perfected by development in himself. Knowing the meaning of this, he then uttered this exclamation: "What earlier was, later was not. What earlier was not, later was. What had not been both will not be, and is not at the present time." Again, the Blessed One sat reviewing the abandonment of the varieties of diversification in himself. Knowing the meaning of this, he then uttered this exclamation: "Who, with no basis for diversifying, has set aside the tie and block as well, and lives on as a seer released from craving, him the world with its gods will not despise." Bhikkhus, there are these four noble truths: the noble truth of suffering, the noble truth of the origin of suffering, the noble truth of the cessation of suffering, and the noble truth of the way leading to the cessation of suffering. A perfect one, accomplished and fully enlightened, is so called because of his discovery of these four noble truths according as they actually are. The Buddha names the 6 Buddhas that preceded him. This is from the Digha Nikaya. It is 91 ages ago, bhikkhus, that the Blessed One Vipassi, accomplished and fully enlightened, appeared in the world. It is 31 aeons ago that the Blessed One Sikhi, accomplished and fully enlightened, appeared in the world. In that same 31 aeons ago, the Blessed One Vesabhu, accomplished and fully enlightened, appeared in the world. In this auspicious age, the Blessed One Kakusandha, accomplished and fully enlightened, has appeared in the world. In this same auspicious aeon, the Blessed One Konagamana, accomplished and fully enlightened, has appeared in the world. In this same auspicious aeon, the Blessed One Kassapa, accomplished and fully enlightened, has appeared in the world. In this same auspicious aeon, I now, accomplished and fully enlightened, have appeared in the world. In this same sutta, after describing the others, here is what he says about himself. I am of Khattiya, warrior noble stock. I was reborn into a Khattiya family. I am a Gautama by clan. My life's span is of short length. It is brief and soon over. One who lives long now completes the century or a little more. I was enlightened at the root of an Asata banyan tree as my enlightenment tree. My chief disciples are Sariputta and Moggallana. I have had one convocation consisting of 1,250 disciples, all of them arahants. My chief attendant, is the Bhikkhu Ananda. A king, Suddhodana by name, was my father. A queen, Maya by name, was the mother that bore me. The royal capital was the city of Kapilavatthu. This was said by the Blessed One, said by the Accomplished One, so I heard. Bhikkhus, the world has been discovered by the Perfect One, the Tathagata. The Perfect One is disassociated from the world. The origin of the world has been discovered by the Perfect One. The Perfect One has abandoned the origin of the world. The cessation of the world has been discovered by the Perfect One. The Perfect One has realized the cessation of the world. The way leading to the cessation of the world has been discovered by the Perfect One. The Perfect One has maintained in being the way leading to the cessation of the world. Another way of saying that would be the Perfect One has developed the way leading to the cessation of the world. In the world with its deities, whatever can be seen, heard, sensed, and cognized, or reached, sought out and encompassed by the mind, has been discovered by the Perfect One. That is why he is called Tathagata. All that he says, all that he utters, between the night when he discovers the supreme full enlightenment and the night when he attains final Nibbana, the element of Nibbana without result of former clinging left, is true, tata, thus. Not other than that. That is why he is called a Perfect One, Tathagata. As he says, so he does. As he does, so he says. That is why he is called the Tathagata. In the world with its deities, it is the Perfect One who is the transcendent being, untranscended, all-seer and wielder of powers. That is why he is called the Tathagata. That's actually one of my favorite quotes in all of the suttas, that phrase, as he says, so he does. As he does, so he says. That is why he is called the Tathagata. That's always very powerful for me. Whatever in this world with its deities is to be seen, heard, sensed, and cognized, or reached, sought out, and encompassed by the mind, that I know, that I have directly known. Now, while that is recognized by a Perfect One, he nevertheless does not use it as a basis for conceit. Were I to say of all that I know it not, that would be falsely spoken by me. And were I to say of it that I know it and know it not, that would be the same. And if I were to say of it that I neither know it nor know it not, that would be incorrect on my part. So, having seen what can be seen, a Perfect One conceives no conceit of what is seen. He conceives no conceit of what is unseen. He conceives no conceit of what could be seen. And he conceives no conceit of any seer. Having heard what can be heard, having sensed what can be sensed, having cognized what can be cognized, he conceives no conceit of any cognizer. A Perfect One thus equipoised toward things seen, heard, sensed, or cognized, remains thus equipoised, and there is no other equipoise that is beyond or superior to that equipoise, I say. This is Anguttara Nikaya, Book of the Fours, Sutta 24. And then in the above one, the as he says, so he does, that's actually Itivuttaka 112, and also Anguttara Nikaya, Book of the Fours, 23, the one just previous to it. King Pasenadi of Kosala asked the Blessed One, Lord, I have heard this. The monk Gotama says, there is no monk or Brahmin who can claim to have complete knowledge and vision as one who is omniscient and all-seeing. That is not possible. Lord, do those who say that perhaps say what has been said by the Blessed One and not misrepresent the Blessed One with what is not the fact? And do they express ideas in accordance with the Dhamma and nothing legitimately deducible from their assertions that would provide grounds for condemning them? Great King, those who say that say what has not been said by me and misrepresent me. Then, Lord, would it have been said with reference to something else that the Blessed One said that, and the person believed it was otherwise? At any rate, Lord, in what way does the Blessed One know the utterance to have been made? I know an utterance to have been made in this way, Great King. There is no monk or Brahmin who knows all, sees all in one single moment. That's from Majjhima Nikaya 90. A perfect one has these 10 perfect one's powers, possessing which he claims the leader's place in the herd, makes his lions roar in the assemblies, and sets the matchless wheel of Brahma turning. What 10? A perfect one understands, according as it actually is, the possible as possible, and the impossible as impossible. He understands, according as it actually is, with its possibilities and reasons, the past, future, and present liability to ripening of actions that have been effected. He understands likewise whither all ways lead. He understands likewise the world with its many elements and various elements. He understands likewise the differing inclinations of beings. He understands likewise the dispositions of the spiritual faculties in other beings, other persons. He understands likewise the corruption, purification, and emergence in the meditations, liberations, concentrations, and attainments. He recollects his manifold past lives. With the divine eye, which is purified and surpasses the human, he sees beings passing away and reappearing. He understands how beings pass on according to their actions. By realization himself with direct knowledge, he here and now enters and abides in the deliverance of mind and the deliverance by understanding that are taintless with the exhaustion of the taints. A perfect one has these 4 kinds of intrepidity, possessing which he claims the leader's place in the herd. I see no sign that any monk or Brahmin or deity or Mara or Brahma in the world will justly accuse me thus. By you who claim to be fully enlightened, these things are still undiscovered. Or thus, in you who claim to have exhausted taints, these taints are still not exhausted. Or thus, those things which are said by you to be obstructive are not in fact obstructive to one who practices them. Or thus, when your Dhamma is taught for someone's benefit, it does not lead to the complete exhaustion of suffering in one who practices it. Seeing no sign of that, I dwell secure, unanxious, and fearless. That was from Majjhima Nikaya, Sutta 12. And this next one is Itivuttaka 38. This was said by the Blessed One, said by the Accomplished One, so I heard. 2 thoughts often occur to a perfect one, accomplished and fully enlightened, the thought of harmlessness and the thought of seclusion. A perfect one takes pleasure and delights in non-affliction, and with that it often occurs to him, by such behavior I afflict none, timid or bold. A perfect one takes pleasure and delight in seclusion, and with that it often occurs to him, what is unwholesome has been abandoned. And the next one is Itivuttaka 22. Bhikkhus, do not fear merit. Merit is a term for happiness, for the wanted, the desired, the agreeable, and the loved. I have had direct knowledge by experience for a long period of what is wanted, desired, agreeable, and loved as the ripening of merit made over a long period. After maintaining and being the meditation of loving kindness for 7 years, I did not return to this world for 7 aeons of world contraction and expansion. In the age when the world was contracting, I went to the heaven of the Brahmas of streaming radiance. In the age when the world was expanding, I was reborn in an empty Brahma mansion. There I was a Brahma, a great Brahma, a transcendent being, untranscended, an all-seer, a wielder of powers. I have been Sakka, ruler of gods, 36 times. I have been a king many hundred times as a righteous universal monarch, turning the wheel, victorious in all 4 quarters, with my realm stabilized and in possession of the 7 treasures. What need I say of local kingship? I thought, of what action of mine is this the fruit? Is this the ripening, that I am now so mighty and powerful? Then it occurred to me, it is the fruit, the ripening of 3 kinds of actions of mine, that I am now so mighty and powerful, that is to say, of giving, of self-control, and of restraint. This next one's Anguttara Nikaya, Book of the Fours, Sutta 36. At one time, the Blessed One was traveling by the road between Ukata and Setavaya, and the Brahman Dona was traveling by that road too. So this is revisiting something that I had read out earlier in the winter retreat. Brahman Dona was traveling by that road too. He saw in the Blessed One's footprints wheels with 1,000 spokes and with rims and hubs all complete. Then he thought, it is wonderful, it is marvelous, surely this can never be the footprint of a human being. Then the Blessed One left the road and sat down at the root of a tree, cross-legged, with his body held erect and mindfulness established before him. Then the Brahman Dona, who was following up the footprints, saw him sitting at the root of the tree. The Blessed One inspired trust and confidence, his faculties being stilled, his mind quiet, and attained to supreme control and serenity. A tusker elephant, self-controlled and guarded by restraint of sense faculties. The Brahman went up to him and asked, Sir, will you be a god? No, Brahman. Will you be a heavenly angel? No, Brahman. Will you be a spirit? No, Brahman. Will you be a human being? No, Brahman. Then, sir, what indeed will you be? Brahman, the taints by means of which, through my not having abandoned them, I might be a god or a heavenly angel or a spirit or a human being, have been abandoned by me, cut off at the root, made like a palm stump, done away with, and are no more subject to future arising. Just as a blue or red or white lotus is born in water, grows in water, and stands up above the water untouched by it, so too I, who was born in the world and grew up in the world, have transcended the world, and I live untouched by the world. Remember me as one who is enlightened. And that's remember me as Buddha. This next sutta from Majjhima Nikaya 91, and it goes into detail about different characteristics of how the Buddha acts and how he conducts himself. Again, the Blessed One was wandering at one time in the country of the Videhans with a large community of bhikkhus, with 500 bhikkhus. Now at that time, the Brahman Brahmayu was living at Mithila. He was old, aged, burdened with years, advanced in life, and come to the last stage. He was in his 120th year. He was expert in the 3 Vedas. He knew the text and context of the Itihasas, the 5th of the Brahmanical authorities, with their invocations, liturgy, and word analysis, and he was fully versed in natural science and that of the marks of the great man. He had heard of the Blessed One's qualities, and that he was wandering in the country of the Videhans. He had a pupil, a young Brahmin student named Uttara, who was as expert as his teacher and as fully versed, too, in the science of the marks of the great man. The Brahmin said to his pupil, "Come, my dear Uttara, go to the monk Gotama and find out whether the report of him that has been spread abroad is true or not, and whether he is one such as that or not. We shall see the monk Gotama through you." "But how shall I find out, dear sir?" "My dear Uttara, the 32 marks of the great man have been handed down in our scriptures, and the great man who is endowed with them has only 2 possible destinies and no other. If he lives the house life, he becomes a righteous universal monarch, a conqueror of the 4 quarters, all victorious, who stabilizes his country and possesses the 7 treasures, the wheel treasure, the elephant treasure, the horse treasure, the jewel treasure, the woman treasure, the householder treasure, and the steward treasure as the 7th. His children, who exceed 1,000, are brave and heroic and crush others' armies. Over this earth, bounded by the ocean, he rules without a rod, without a weapon, and in righteousness. But if he goes forth from the house life into homelessness, he becomes an accomplished one, a fully enlightened one, who draws aside the veil of the world. But I, my dear Uttara, am the giver of the scriptures. You are the receiver of them." "Even so, sir," he replied. He rose from his seat, and after paying homage to the Brahmin, keeping him on his right, he left for where the Blessed One was wandering in the country of the Videhans. Traveling by stages, he came to where the Blessed One was. He exchanged greetings with him, and when his courteous and formal talk was finished, he sat down at one side. When he had done so, he looked for the 32 marks of the great man on the Blessed One's body. He saw, more or less, the 32 marks there, except for 2. He was doubtful and uncertain about 2 of the marks, and he could not decide and make up his mind about them, about what should be hidden by cloth being enclosed in a sheath, and about the largeness of his tongue. Then it occurred to the Blessed One that he was doubtful about these 2 marks. He worked a feat of supernormal power such that the Brahmin student Uttara saw that in the Blessed One what should be hidden by cloth was enclosed by a sheath. Then the Blessed One extruded his tongue, and he repeatedly touched both ear holes, and he repeatedly touched both nostril holes, and he hid the whole of his forehead with his tongue. Then the Brahmin thought, "The monk Gotama is endowed with the 32 marks of the great man. Suppose I follow him and observe his behavior." Then he followed him for 7 months like a shadow, never leaving him. At the end of 7 months in the country of the Videhans, he set out to return to Mithila. He went to Brahmayu the Brahmin, paid homage, and sat down at one side. Then the Brahmin asked him, "Well, my dear Uttara, is the report of the monk Gotama that has been spread about true or not true? And is Master Gotama one such as that or not?" "The report is true, sir, not incorrect. Master Gotama is one such as that and no other. Now Master Gotama sets his foot down squarely. This is the mark of a great man in him. On the soles of his feet there are wheels with 1,000 spokes and with rims and hubs complete. He has projecting heels. He has long fingers and toes. His hands and feet are soft and tender. He has netted hands. His feet are arched. His legs are like an antelope's. When he stands without stooping, the palms of both his hands touch and rub against his knees. That in him which should be covered by cloth is enclosed in a sheath. He is the color of gold. His skin has a golden sheen, but he is fine-skinned. Because of the fineness of his skin, dust and dirt do not stick to his body. His body hairs grow singly, each hair growing alone in its pore. The tips of his body hairs turn up. The upturned hairs are blue-black, the color of jet, curled and turned to the right. He has the straight limbs of a Brahma. He has 7 convexities. He has the upper torso of a lion. The furrow between his shoulders is filled in. He has the proportions of a banyan tree. The spread of his arms equals the height of his body, and the height of his body equals the span of his arms. His neck and shoulders are even. His sense of taste is supremely acute. He is lion-jawed. He has 40 teeth. His teeth are even. His teeth have no gaps between. His teeth are quite white. He has a large tongue. He has a divine voice, like that of the Karavika bird. His eyes, it says here his eyes are very black, but I think it's blue. His eyes are blue, dark blue. He has the eyelashes of a cow. In the space between his eyebrows he has down growing, which is white with the sheen of soft cotton. His head is shaped like a turban. This also is the mark of a great man in him. So Master Gotama is endowed with these 32 marks of the great man. When he walks, he steps out with the right foot first. He does not extend his foot too far or put it down too near. He walks neither too quickly nor too slowly. He walks without his knees knocking together. He walks without his ankles knocking together. He walks without raising or lowering his thighs or bringing them together or keeping them apart. When he walks, only the lower part of his body oscillates, and he walks with no bodily effort. When he turns to look, he does so with his whole body. He does not look vertically down. He does not look vertically up. He does not walk looking about. He looks a plow yoke's length before him. Beyond that, he has the vision of unhindered knowledge. When he goes indoors, he does not raise or lower his body or bend it forward or back. He turns round neither too far from the seat nor too near it. He does not lean on the seat with his hand. He does not throw his body down onto the seat. When seated indoors, he does not fidget with his hands. He does not fidget with his feet. He does not sit with knees crossed. He does not sit with his ankles crossed. He does not sit with his hand holding his chin. When seated indoors, he is not afraid. He does not shiver and tremble. He is not nervous. His hair does not stand up on that account, and he is intent on seclusion. When he receives water for the bowl, he does not raise or lower the bowl or tip it forward or backward. He receives neither too little nor too much water for the bowl. He washes the bowl without splashing. He washes the bowl without turning it about. He does not put the bowl on the floor to wash his hands. When his hands are washed, the bowl is washed, and when the bowl is washed, his hands are washed. He pours the water for the bowl away, neither too far nor too near, and he does not pour it about. When he receives rice, he does not raise or lower the bowl or tip it forward or backward. He receives neither too little nor too much rice. He adds sauces in the right proportion. He does not exceed the right amount of sauce in the mouthful. He turns the mouthful over 3 or 4 times in his mouth and then swallows it, and no rice grain enters his body unmasticated, or does any remain in his mouth. Then he takes another mouthful. He takes his food, experiencing the taste without experiencing greed for the taste. The food he takes has 5 factors. It is neither for amusement, nor for intoxication, nor for smartening, nor for embellishing, but only for the endurance and continuance of this body, for the ending of discomfort, and for assisting the holy life, thinking, thus shall I terminate old feelings without arousing new feelings, and I shall live in comfort, healthy and blameless. When he has eaten and receives water for the bowl, he does not raise or lower the bowl or tip it forward or backward. He receives neither too little nor too much water for the bowl. He washes the bowl without making a splashing noise. He washes the bowl without turning it about. He does not put the bowl on the floor to wash his hands. When his hands are washed, the bowl is washed. When the bowl is washed, his hands are washed. He pours the water for the bowl neither too far nor too near, and he does not pour it about. When he has eaten, he puts the bowl on the floor, neither too far nor too near, and he is neither careless of the bowl nor over-solicitous about it. When he has eaten, he sits in silence for a while, but he does not let the time for the blessing go by. When he gives the blessing after eating, he does not do so criticizing that meal or expecting another meal. He instructs, urges, rouses, and encourages that audience with talk purely on the Dhamma. When he has finished that, he rises from his seat and departs. He walks neither too fast nor too slow, and he does not go as one who who wants to get away. His robe is worn neither too high nor too low on his body, nor tight against his body, nor loose against his body, nor does the wind blow his robe away from his body. Dust and dirt do not soil his body. When he has gone to the forest, he sits down on a seat made ready. Having sat down, he washes his feet. He does not concern himself with pedicure. After washing his feet, he seats himself cross-legged, sets his body erect, and establishes mindfulness in front of him. He does not occupy his mind with self-affliction or affliction of others or affliction of both. He sits with his mind set on his own welfare, on others' welfare, and on the welfare of both. In fact, on the welfare of the whole world. When he goes to the monastery, he teaches the Dhamma to an audience. He neither flatters nor berates that audience. He instructs, urges, rouses, and encourages that audience with talk purely on the Dhamma. The speech issuing from his mouth has 8 qualities. It is distinct, intelligible, melodious, audible, ringing, incisive, deep, and sonorous. But while his voice is intelligible as far as the confines of the audience, his speech does not extend beyond that audience. When the people have been instructed, urged, roused, and encouraged by him, they rise from their seats and depart, looking only to him and concerned with nothing else. Sir, we have seen Master Gotama walking. We have seen him standing. We have seen him indoors seated in silence. We have seen him indoors eating. We have seen him indoors sitting in silence after eating. We have seen him giving the blessing after eating. We have seen him going to the monastery. We have seen him sitting in the monastery in silence. And we have seen him in the monastery teaching the Dhamma to an audience. Such is Master Gotama. Such he is, and more than that. When this was said, the Brahmin Brahmayu rose from his seat and, arranging his upper robe on one shoulder, raised his palms together toward where the Blessed One was, and he uttered this exclamation 3 times. Honor to the Blessed One, accomplished and fully enlightened. Honor to the Blessed One, accomplished and fully enlightened. Honor to the Blessed One, accomplished and fully enlightened. Now suppose some time or other we were to meet Master Gotama. Suppose we had some conversation together. That's the Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Sama Sambuddhassa. So that's good for now. It's about 10 minutes for questions, and next week continue with more descriptions of how the Buddha was. And I like that particular sutta because sometimes it can go into the 32 marks, which is kind of, who knows whether it's something that was added in later because it was part of the Brahmin text, if it was actually the case that he actually had a tongue as huge, that was so huge it could cover his forehead. We don't know that, but then I like the latter part of the sutta where they're describing how he walks, how he sits, and just very applicable, so that the fidgeting with the hands and feet, so like these little deportment things which are basically they're the confines of a Buddha, because you'll even see like Lumpur Liam pushing a tissue box back and forth or fidgeting with his hands a bit or something. But for a Buddha, it's like the knowledge and conduct. So it's they also call it in the Chinese tradition the 10,000-fold conduct, where it far exceeds that which is in the Vinaya, but it comes from the pure heart and that kind of conduct that comes out of something beyond what can be studied in books. So that really comes through there, I think. Like not walking too fast or too slow. It's really like that. Just the balance. There's always this sense of balance.
Which makes me think that having read the way forward makes me think of what Dan talks about, like everything you do, whether it's like hanging up a book rag, how it's like there's a way to do everything just right.
Yeah.
If you're present, mindful, like how to do the smallest things can be used for practice.
Yeah, you really got that with Lumpur Ban. He exemplified that. It's like the sandals. One of the few monasteries where all the sandals are perfectly. Well, we're pretty good here as well. But like outside the sala, the sandals all had to be perfect, or else Lumpur Ban would say something about it. But then I noticed that going there and visiting, the sandals would only be like that in the places where Lumpur Ban frequented. So they would only do it in places where you would see it. If you went somewhere else, like to the toilet block or something, it was as if you were anywhere else. Yeah, like the robe, hanging the robe up, there's the standard of like 1/3, 2/3. So that's like the just right standard of the robe hanging over the line, so that the 1/3 is hanging over and 2/3 over the other end, so the wind catches it and yet it doesn't fall off the line.
Another thing that strikes me is the way that they describe the Buddha speaking, both in terms of like the tone of his voice, but then also like volume. I know that's one thing that like I have to pay a lot of attention to, is how loud I'm speaking and so forth. And it's a really kind of a delicate balance there, so that everybody in the room who you're speaking to can understand your enunciation, especially without like a PA system, right, back in the day. But then nobody outside can hear. Yeah, it's a very refined balance to strike.
Yeah, that's very interesting, because you do see it sometimes, like, you know, you might have an Ajahn who speaks very, very quietly and people in the back of the room can't hear. Or someone who's just like, you know, the wall penetrating voice. That, you know, just, even if they're inside of a building and you're outside of a building, you can still hear it.
You know, for me it would be different when you see the city monks and the forest monks. It's very inspiring to see the way the forest monks go through them.
And it's almost like you can't fake this kind of conduct, because it only comes from a lot of meditation and a lot of training and practice. You can't just like decide to act like that. Somehow keep it up. You're going to falter somewhere or have a lack of mindfulness somewhere. It takes that supreme mindfulness to actually act like that.
Yeah, I just refer that in Thailand and see things.
Yeah.
Paul was quoted as saying something like, somebody asked him if he had vagueness, like psychic powers, and he said that he didn't need to read his student's mind. He just saw how he entered the Dhamma hall and bowed, and that was enough.
Yeah, yeah. Longboard Man as well, and his teaching about bowing, said you don't need to have any psychic powers. Just watch how somebody bows. Or like Longboard like saying, he doesn't need to have psychic powers, he just has to go and look at somebody's kuti. You can just look inside and see what's going on. And there's different refined levels to that too. Like somebody's kuti might be clean, but you might then open a drawer and like everything's just been stuffed into a drawer, higgledy-piggledy. Oh, okay. So maybe that's somebody who, everything looks good on the outside, but then you kind of dig a bit. And it's kind of like everything's just been shoved away in some out-of-sight place. Or like you might notice somebody might mop the floor in their kuti, but then if you inspect closely, like you'll see how thorough it is. Sometimes it's like, oh, only the center is mopped, like only where the mop reaches is mopped. But then you'll see that, oh, they didn't get down on their hands and knees and do the little corners and the trim where the dust gets thick. And like, oh, okay, see, okay, they're at that level.
Or they might be really wound tight.
Or it's too much, everything is in perfect squares. And that's out of balance. That's also out of balance. That this is where it's in balance. I went into an empty kuti one time, and there hadn't been an occupant for a long time, and the kuti was completely empty, and I opened one of the drawers, and there was a bottle of urine. It's very, who knows how old it was. It's like... Never know what you're going to find. Or like Longboard talks about like going to a monastery and the spittoons were like, didn't get washed, so like the spittoons were put out, you spit betel nut into them, and then after the ceremony they were all just gathered up and put away. He said it was like the most disgusting thing he ever saw. You just don't want to put the effort into washing them. But then Longboard Ban said that your spittoon should be kept clean enough to drink water out of. It's a pretty high standard. Okay.